Arthur, it's great to have you on. You're one of my favorite people, favorite people in the world. You're just such a positive, wise individual. You communicate so well, but I really consider you to be one of my go-to people on the subject of happiness. An expert on happiness.
Thank you, Sal. And by the way, before you continue, you've done so much for me too. I mean, your guests probably don't know, but you and I met. I met you long before you met me because I'm a Mind Pump listener for years now. And I was wondering at some point how many of the Harvard faculty are Mind Pump listeners. I'm kind of wondering that, but I bet you there's more than just me. And you've been so helpful. I mean, your attitude about self-improvement, about how each of us is responsible through personal responsibility, but more than anything else, that we have this accomplishment mentality that you guys at Mind Pump are serving people. The reason it's the most popular fitness, health, and entertainment podcast in the world, by the way, is not because you're giving great fitness tips. It's because you're helping people live better, happier lives. And me, as a guy who does work as a scholar on happiness and on the side trying to stay in really good shape because of you, this is a natural synergy, I have to say. But you've done a lot more for me than I've ever been able to do for you.
Oh, well, I really appreciate that. So let's talk about happiness. Let's talk a little bit about first off, how do we define it? Sometimes I'll read articles and studies, and they'll say things like people in Denmark are the happiest in the world, or people over here are happier than over there. Is it just simply asking people if they're happy? Or how do we define it? Is it the good feeling of joy that I'll get if I, drink a nice bottle of wine or hang out with my kids? How do we define it first off?
So a lot of different scholars and ordinary people define it in different ways. Happiness means everything and nothing. It's one of these contentless words. It gets people's attention because the one thing that we know is we all want it. The trouble is when you ask people to define it, most people, particularly Americans and people in the West, will say, well, I feel good. They'll talk about their feelings. And that's actually not very helpful because feelings are really transitory. The way that we measure it in the social science business, so I'm a behavioral social scientist, and the way that we measure it is we ask people to assess their own level of general well-being. And that mixes a whole bunch of stuff together I'll talk about. But basically, you'll say, all things considered, life has got ups and downs. How happy would you say you are about your life? And they give you these incredibly stable and honest answers as long as they're answering anonymously. You don't answer that in front of your wife, for example. You got to do that, in the conscience of your own heart. But the way that people actually answer that question is that they're thinking about three different dimensions. And this is what the science has uncovered. They're thinking about enjoyment of their life. They're thinking about satisfaction or fulfillment with their life, and they're thinking about purpose and meaning in their life, all kind of agglomerated together. So you kind of mush those three concepts together. And if you got all of one and none of the other, you won't feel very happy. So if you're all enjoyment and no purpose, let's call that, college life, then you're basically partying and drinking and hanging out and, meeting girls and fantastic, right? But you won't actually call yourself happy according to the data. Or if you're all purpose and no enjoyment, it's kind of grim, it's like American Gothic. It's just not that fun. So you got to have those three, and satisfaction is in the middle. And if you've got this balance this golden mean between those three dimensions, you're going to say you're a happy person.